Dr. Jiwoo rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the computer screen again. She had been working at the Seoul Deep Space Communication Center for 6 hours straight, but something was different tonight. The numbers and patterns flowing across her monitor were not like anything she had ever seen before. "This is strange," she whispered to herself, leaning closer to the screen. The signals were too organized to be random space noise, but too complicated to be natural sounds from stars or planets. She pressed a few buttons and watched the data move across the screen like a waterfall of light. Her heart started beating faster. After 3 years of listening to empty space, she might have found something real. "Director Kim, you need to see this right now," she called across the dark room. Her voice shook with excitement and worry. Director Taeho walked over from his desk, carrying his coffee cup. His face was lined with wrinkles from 23 years of watching the stars and waiting for something to happen. He had seen many false alarms and real discoveries, but this felt different. "What do you have, Jiwoo?" asked, setting down his cup and putting on his reading glasses. "Look at this pattern," she said, pointing at the screen. "It repeats every 47 minutes exactly. See these numbers here? They look like math problems. And these coordinates match star positions in the Kepler 442 system." Taeho watched the screen for several minutes without speaking. Patterns were beautiful and complex, like a song made of numbers and light. But there was something else hidden in the signal, something that made his stomach feel tight. "Have you called Dr. Haeunsu?" he asked. "I sent him a message an hour ago. He should be here soon." Jiwoo continued working on the signal, trying to understand what it meant. She separated the different parts and found 3 main sections. The first part was mathematics, simple equations that any intelligent species would understand. The second part was a map of local star systems with precise measurements. The third part was the mystery. At 3:47 in the morning, the door burst open. Dr. Haeunsu ran into the room with papers flying from his hands. His usually neat hair was messy, and his clothes looked like he had gotten dressed in the dark. "Solved it," he said, breathing hard. "I solved the third part of the transmission." Jiwoo and Taeho stared at him, waiting. "It's a distress call," Haeunsu said quietly. "They're asking for help." The room became very quiet. Outside, Seoul was sleeping, but inside this small room, 3 people had just discovered that humanity was not alone in the universe. "Who are they?" Jiwoo asked. Hugh asked too. Sue spread his papers on the desk. "They call themselves the Korathi. From what I can understand, they live in the Kepler 442 system. Their message is very clear. Their world is dying, and they're sending this signal to anyone who might be listening." "How long have they been transmitting?" Taeho asked. "Based on the signal strength and the way it's organized, probably for many years, maybe decades." Haeunsu's voice was sad. "They've been calling for help for a very long time." Jiwoo felt tears in her eyes. Somewhere in space, an entire civilization was facing death, and they had been crying out for help while humans went about their daily lives, never knowing what's happening to them. She asked. Haeunsu looked at his notes. "There is an enemy. They call the Harvesters. From their description, these Harvesters travel from star to star, destroying everything they find. They take all the resources from planets and leave nothing behind. How many Korathi are left?" The transmission suggests they're hiding on their moon. Their home planet has already been attacked. The Harvesters are slowly taking everything, and the Korathi can't fight back anymore. The 3 scientists sat in silence, thinking about what this meant. After years of searching for life in space, they had found it, but it was a species facing extinction. "We have to tell someone," Gu said. "Who do we tell?" He and Sue asked. "And what can Earth do? We barely have the technology to reach our own moon easily." Taeho stood up and walked to the secure communication phone on the wall. This was a direct line to the Blue House where the president of Korea worked. He had never used it before. "We tell our leaders," he said. "Humanity has waited forever to hear from the stars. We finally got our message, and it's a cry for help." As he picked up the phone, Jiwoo continued listening to the Korathi signal. In the background, she could hear something that sounded almost like music, sad, beautiful, and desperate. It was the sound of an entire civilization saying goodbye to the universe, hoping that someone, somewhere, was listening. "Hello, this is Director Kim Tae-ho from the Seoul Deep Space Communication Center," he said into the phone. "I need to speak with the President immediately. We have received our first message from an alien civilization, fate of two worlds." Now hung in the balance of a phone call made in the early morning darkness, the big meeting room in the National Assembly building was filled with worried voices and tired faces. President Park So-young had been sitting at the long table for 14 hours straight, listening to arguments and debates. Her head hurt, but she knew this was the most important decision any human leader had ever made. Around the table sat generals, scientists, and government officials from many countries. Everyone looked tired, but nobody wanted to leave. They all knew that what they decided today would change humanity forever. Admiral Lee Dongmin stood up slowly. His blue uniform was still neat and clean, even though he had not slept all night. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in a calm voice, "the Unified Earth Defense Force has been planning for this day for 30 years. We knew that someday we might meet aliens, and we might need to help them or fight them." He pressed a button, and a big screen showed a picture of a spaceship. It was long and silver, with powerful engines and weapons. "This is the Seoul's pride," Admiral Lee continued. "It's our most advanced spaceship. It can travel faster than light and reach the Karathi system in 6 months." General Choi Hae-won slammed her hand on the table. She was a small woman, but her voice was loud and strong. "Wait a minute," she said angrily. "You want to send our people across space to fight aliens we know nothing about? What if it's a trap? What if these harvesters are stronger than us?" "General, Choi raises a good point," said Dr. Kim from the Science Ministry. "We don't know anything about these enemies. They could have weapons we can't imagine." Captain Kang Min-ho, who had been standing quietly by the wall, stepped forward. He was younger than the others, but his face was confident. "With respect, General," he said politely, "I think you should know something. When news of the Karathi message reached our military bases, something amazing happened." He pulled out a thick folder full of papers. "These are volunteer applications," he said, holding up the folder. "In just 2 days, we received over 50,000 requests from soldiers, pilots, and officers who want to join this mission. They come from Korea, Japan, America, Europe, Africa, everywhere." President Park looked surprised. 50,000? "Yes, Madam President. Navy sailors, Air Force pilots, Army soldiers, Marines, they all want to help. We even have applications from retired veterans who want to come out of retirement for this mission." Dr. Ji-woo, who had been quiet during most of the meeting, stood up with her tablet computer. "I have more bad news from the Karathi," she said sadly. "Their latest transmission came in 3 hours ago. Harvesters have destroyed 2 more of their defense stations. At this rate, the Karathi will be completely destroyed in 4 months, maybe less." She showed everyone a translation of the alien message on the big screen. To anyone listening in the darkness, she read aloud, "We are the last of our kind hiding on our moon. The metal death ships have taken our beautiful world and turned it into emptiness. Our children ask why the Skyfire beings came to hurt us. We have no answer. If someone hears this, please remember that we tried to be good. We tried to help others. We tried to make beautiful things. Please remember the Karathi." The room became very quiet. Many people wiped tears from their eyes. General Choi's angry expression softened. "They're really going to die, aren't they?" "Yes," Dr. Ji-woo said quietly. "And from what we can understand, the harvesters don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They just take everything and move to the next world." Foreign Minister Lee spoke up from his chair. "What if we succeed? What if we save the Karathi? How will this change Earth's relationship with other alien species?" "That's exactly why we have to do this," said Admiral Lee. "This will be humanity's introduction to the galaxy. Do we want to be known as the species that heard a cry for help and did nothing? Or do we want to be known as the species that traveled across space to save strangers?" President Park had been listening to everything without speaking. Now she stood up slowly. Everyone turned to look at her. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but today she looked like the leader of the entire human race. I keep thinking about something, she said in a quiet voice. My grandmother used to tell me stories about World War II, and Korean volunteers went to help fight against evil in other countries. She said they went because it was the right thing to do. She walked to the window and looked out at Seoul, where millions of people were living their normal lives, not knowing that their leaders were deciding humanity's future. The Korathi have been calling for help for years, President Park continued. They didn't know if anyone was listening, but they kept trying. Now we know they're out there, and we know they need help. She turned back to face the room. We didn't spend hundreds of years dreaming of reaching the stars just to ignore people who need our help. I authorize the mission. Humanity will answer the call. The room exploded with activity as everyone started talking at once, making plans and preparing for humanity's first interstellar rescue mission, the Souls. Pride moved through space faster than light, traveling through a strange place called hyperspace where normal rules didn't work. Captain Kang Min-ho walked slowly through the long hallways of his ship, looking at the faces of his crew members. 800 people from 47 different countries had volunteered for this dangerous mission. There were Korean soldiers, American pilots, German engineers, Nigerian doctors, Brazilian mechanics, and Russian navigators. They all wore the same blue uniforms, but Captain Kong could hear many different languages as people talked quietly. In the hallways, "Good morning, Captain," said Sergeant Williams from Canada as he passed by. The young man was carrying his rifle and heading to training practice. "Good morning, Sergeant. How are the new recruits doing?" Captain Kong asked. "They're scared, sir, but they're ready to fight. They'll all know why we're here." Captain Kong nodded and continued walking. Every day he tried to visit different parts of the ship to see how everyone was doing. The Soul's Pride was like a small city flying through space, and these people were far from their homes and families. In the war room, Major Yoon Dasam stood in front of 30 Marines from different countries. Behind her was a big screen showing pictures and videos that the Korathi had sent in their messages. "Look at these images carefully," Major Yoon said, pointing at the screen. "These are the harvesters. They're not alive like us. They're machines. Robot ships that think like computers." The screen showed dark, triangular ships that looked like pieces of black metal floating in space. They had no windows, no decorations, nothing that looked human or alive. "Machines are very good at some things," Major Yoon continued. "They don't get tired, they don't get scared, they don't make mistakes. But they're also bad at other things. They can't be creative, can't change their plans quickly when something unexpected happens." Private Chen from Taiwan raised his hand. "Major, how do we fight something that doesn't get scared? It'd be unpredictable." Major Yoon smiled. "We do things that their computer brains can't understand. We be human." 3 levels below, Lieutenant. Colonel Park Jae-sung sat alone in a dark room full of radio equipment. He wore big headphones and listened carefully to signals coming from the Korathi star system. Every day, the news got worse. "Another defense station destroyed," he wrote in his daily report. "The Korathi are down to their last 3 orbital platforms. Population on the moon is estimated at less than 2 million. He had been listening to these alien voices for 4 months now. Even though he couldn't understand their language perfectly, he could hear the sadness and fear in their voices. Sometimes, late at night, he could hear what sounded like children crying in the background of the transmissions in the science laboratory. Dr. Seo Min-jun stared at his computer screen, trying to understand how harvester technology worked. Korathi had managed to send detailed images of destroyed harvester ships before their own cameras were destroyed. "Fascinating," he whispered to himself. The alien machines were built in perfect geometric shapes, triangles, hexagons, and other mathematical forms. They were designed only for destruction and efficiency, with no wasted space or unnecessary parts. His assistant, Dr. Raj from India, looked over his shoulder. "Any weaknesses, Dr. Seo?" "Maybe." Dr. Seo replied thoughtfully. "They're so perfectly designed that they might not be able to handle damage well. If we can break their perfect shapes, their systems might fail." After 6 months of traveling, Navigator Lee Yujin called from the ship's bridge. "Captain, We're about to exit hyperspace. We'll be at the edge of the Korathi system in 5 minutes. Captain Kong hurried to the bridge and sat in his command chair. Around him, officers from many different countries worked at their stations, preparing for what they might see. Exiting hyperspace in 3.2.1. The Soul's Pride dropped back into normal space, and everyone on the bridge gasped at what they saw through the big windows, where there should have been beautiful planets orbiting a yellow star. There were only broken pieces of rock floating. In space, entire worlds had been torn apart and turned into asteroid belts. The harvesters had destroyed everything. "My God," whispered Communications Officer Ahmed from Egypt. "They really did eat the planets." In the distance, they could see one small light, the Korathi moon, still glowing with the energy from defense shields. But surrounding it like hungry wolves were hundreds of dark harvester ships waiting to finish their meal. "Captain," said Tactical Officer Petrov from Russia, "I'm counting 437 enemy vessels. They're all focused on the moon." Captain Kong stood up and pressed the button that would let him speak to everyone on the ship. "All hands, this is your captain." His voice echoed through every room and hallway. "We have arrived at the Korathi system. What we see here is exactly what the distress calls told us. An entire civilization making their last stand against an enemy that shows no mercy." He paused, looking out at the destroyed worlds. "We came here because someone asked for help. Traveled across the galaxy because it was the right thing to do. Today, humanity will show the universe who we really are. All stations, prepare for battle." Throughout the ship, 800 humans from 47 nations prepared to fight for people they had never met. In a place far from home, the Soul's Pride suddenly appeared above the Korathi moon like a silver ghost materializing from nowhere. Captain Kong immediately pressed the communication button that would send his voice to every ship in the area. "This is the Earth vessel Soul's Pride." His clear voice echoed through space on all radio frequencies. "We heard your call for help." For a moment, everything was quiet. The hundreds of dark harvester ships stopped moving as if they were confused by this unexpected visitor. On the Korathi moon below, millions of desperate aliens looked up at their instruments and couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then the harvesters reacted. The geometric black. Ships turned toward the Soul's Pride like a swarm of angry metal insects. Their weapons began glowing with deadly energy as their computer brains calculated the fastest way to destroy this new threat. "Here they come," shouted Tactical Officer Petrov. 200 ships heading straight for us. All weapons. "Fire," Captain Kong ordered. The Soul's Pride erupted with light as every gun and missile launcher fired at once. Bright beams of energy and explosive rockets flew toward the approaching harvester fleet. The first wave of enemy ships exploded in brilliant flashes, but more kept coming. "Launch the Marines," Captain Kong called over the noise of battle, Major. Yoon and her 300 Marines climbed into small, fast attack pods. These were like tiny spaceships that could carry 5 soldiers each. The pods shot out of the Soul's Pride like bullets and flew toward the harvester ships. "Remember," Major Yoon said to her soldiers over the radio, "these machines don't expect us to board their ships. They're designed to attack planets, not to fight soldiers inside their own vessels." The Marines' pods crashed through the metal walls of the harvester ships. Inside, the aliens' vessels were dark and cold, filled with strange machinery and computer equipment. The human soldiers ran through the hallways, destroying everything they could find. "Their control centers are in the middle of each ship," shouted Sergeant Williams as he threw a grenade at a computer panel. "If we can break their command systems, the whole ship stops working." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Park was coordinating the battle from the Soul's Pride's tactical center. He watched hundreds of computer screens showing the positions of every ship in the battle. "The harvesters are using the same attack patterns they use on planets," he said to Captain Kong. "But we're not a planet. We can move and fight back in ways they don't understand." Human weapons had been designed for fighting other humans, who were creative and unpredictable. The guns and missiles worked very well against the harvesters, who had only ever fought helpless planets before. The battle continued for 18 long hours. Commander Osubin led squadrons of small fighter ships through the wreckage of the destroyed Korathi planets. The broken pieces of worlds provided perfect hiding spots for the human pilots. Use the asteroid belt for cover, Commander. O ordered her pilots. Pop out, shoot, then hide again. The human fighters flew in patterns that made no sense to the Harvester computers. They would disappear behind chunks of broken planet, then suddenly appear somewhere else and attack. The machine ships couldn't predict where the humans would be next. But the Harvesters had one big advantage. There were so many of them. For every Harvester ship the humans destroyed, 2 more took its place. Slowly, the Soul's Pride began taking damage. Explosions rocked the ship as enemy weapons found their target. Captain, we've lost main engines, reported Engineer Thompson. From Australia. Hull breach on decks 7 and 8. We're losing air. Keep fighting. Captain Kang shouted back. The Karathi are counting on us. On the moon below, the last Karathi defense shields were failing. The aliens who had been calling for help for so many years watched the space battle above them, hoping but afraid to believe that rescue had finally come. But there were still too many Harvester ships. The Soul's Pride was badly damaged, and many of the marine boarding pods had been destroyed. It looked like the battle might be lost. That's when Captain Kong made a decision that would be remembered forever. All hands, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. Abandoned ship. Get to the escape pods now, sir, asked Navigator Lee, confused captain. Kang looked at the main screen, which showed the largest Harvester ship, a massive triangle of black metal that commanded all the other enemy vessels. I'm setting a collision course for their command ship, he said calmly. If we can destroy their leader, the rest might stop working. Captain, no? Several officers shouted at once, but Captain Kong had already locked the controls. The Soul's Pride turned toward the giant Harvester command vessel and began accelerating. The ship's engines, even though damaged, pushed the vessel faster and faster toward the enemy. For those who called out in the darkness, Captain Kang said into his microphone, his voice being broadcast to every human and Karathi in the system, "Humanity answers." The Soul's Pride crashed into the Harvester command ship at tremendous speed. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from other star systems. When the light faded, both ships were gone, and the remaining Harvester vessels began floating aimlessly in space, like robots that had lost their master. The battle was over. Humanity had won. Commander O'Subin floated in her damaged fighter ship, watching the last of the Harvester vessels disappear into hyperspace like black shadows. Running away from light, around her, pieces of destroyed ships drifted slowly through space, telling the story of the greatest battle humanity had ever fought. All human ships report status, she said into her radio, her voice tired but strong. Ow. She was now the highest-ranking officer left alive after Captain Kong's heroic sacrifice. Fighter Squadron 3 reporting, Commander, came a crackling voice. We lost 8 pilots, but the rest of us are okay. Marine boarding teams reporting, said Major Yoon. We're on the Karathi moon now. The aliens are coming out of their hiding places. Commander O looked down at the gray surface of the moon. Below, for the first time in years, no enemy weapons were firing at it. The Karathi were safe. Small doors and hatches opened across the moon's surface. Strange figures began emerging into the light. The Karathi were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to glow softly in the starlight. Their eyes were large and filled with tears of joy and disbelief. One of the Karathi looked very old and moved slowly, approached Major Yoon and her Marines. The alien wore a simple robe and carried a small device that helped translate languages. I am Elder Valthera, the alien said through the translator, her voice shaking with emotion. We have been waiting so long for this day. Our legends spoke of sky warriors who would come to help those in need, but we never truly believed. Major Yoon removed her helmet, showing her human face to the aliens for the first time. We came as soon as we heard your call for help, Elder. Valthera looked at the human woman with wonder. But why? She asked, switching to broken human words she had learned from listening to Earth's radio transmissions. Why did your people travel so far to help strangers? We have nothing to give you. Major Yoon looked up at the stars, where the debris of the battle still floated. Because someone asked for help, she said simply. That's what humans do. News of the battle spread quickly across the galaxy through quantum communication networks that connected distant star systems. On planets that humans had never heard of, ancient civilizations that had been hiding from the harvesters for thousands of years suddenly began talking about the young species that had traveled across space to save strangers. On a world called Zentara, old scholars who had spent centuries studying galactic history gathered in their crystal libraries. The humans destroyed an entire harvester fleet, one of them said in amazement. No one has ever done that before. He didn't even know the Korathi personally, added another. He just heard a cry for help and responded. On Earth, Dr. Jiwoo sat in the same chair where she had first discovered the Korathi distress signal months ago. But now her computer screen showed something completely different. Instead of one desperate call for help, there were dozens of new signals coming from all directions. Director Kim, she called excitedly. You need to see this? Director Taeho hurried over to her workstation. The screens showed signal after signal, not distress calls, but greetings, invitations, and offers of friendship from species across the galaxy. This one is from the Zintarn Republic, Gi-woo explained, pointing at one signal. They want to establish diplomatic relations. This one is from something called the Spiral Alliance. They're inviting us to join their organization. And this. One... She paused, smiling widely. This one is from a species called the Vorthok. They say they've been hiding from the harvesters for 3,000 years, but now they want to come out and meet the humans who defeated them. At the United Nations building in New York, President Park stood before representatives from every country on Earth. The large assembly hall was packed with people eager to hear about humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. My fellow humans, President Park began, her voice carrying across the room and 2 television screens around the world. We reached for the stars, wondering what we would find. We found our purpose. She paused, looking out at the faces of people. From every nation. We will not be conquerors who take what doesn't belong to us. We will not be colonizers who force others to live like us. We will be guardians, protectors of those who cannot protect themselves. The assembly hall erupted in applause that lasted for several minutes. In the months that followed, the story of the soul's pride became legend throughout the galaxy. On worlds where humans had never set foot, parents told their children bedtime stories about the brave species that answered a stranger's call for help. The Korathi, now safe on their moon, began rebuilding their civilization. They named their new capital city Kongs, landing in honor of the human captain who had sacrificed his life for them. Commander, now promoted to Admiral, established the first human embassy on the Korathi moon. Every day she received messages from species across the galaxy, some asking for help, others offering friendship, and many simply wanting to meet the humans who had changed everything late at night. When the alien stars shone down on the Korathi moon, Admiral Lo would stand at her window and listen to the radio traffic flowing between distant worlds. The galaxy was no longer a place of fear and silence. Voices called out from the darkness, and now they knew that someone was listening. Someone would always come. Humanity had found its place among the stars.